My name is Jane Ruddick, and last November I had the privilege of taking a group of very professional chefs to a very different culinary competition. Last June, the CCFCC was invited to send a team of chefs to compete in the Dubai World Hospitality Championship, a new concept in culinary competitions held at the Dubai World Trade Center under the directive of Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Dubai Crown Prince. Aimed at educating the public and helping to preserve the culinary traditions of the United Arab Emirates for future generations, this three-day event featured a program of competitions primarily highlighting the country's cuisine, heritage and culture. Local crafts, products and foods were displayed, and local chefs were encouraged to prepare authentic traditional Emirati dishes. In addition, 12 seven-man international culinary teams were invited to compete in the international tournament to be judged by WAC's international judges. Each team was to be given 48 hours in which to prepare and present a full international themed cold buffet and a dessert buffet for 54 persons, plus 54 plated main courses and 54 hot desserts. All foods were to be judged and then served to the Sheikh's guests. Teams were to be provided with all transport and accommodation, necessary equipment and ingredients, and full use of a mise en place and a finishing kitchen. It seemed too good an opportunity to miss. The CCFCC Culinary Team Canada was already committed to the EGAHO competition in Switzerland and were unable to take up the challenge. So it was decided to invite the Bocuse d'Or laureate chefs, chefs who had already given so much of their time to compete for Canada as individuals, to make up the Canadian team. 7 former Bocuse d'Or competitors, joined by pastry chef Arthur CHEN, all readily agreed to take up the challenge. Bernard CASAVANT, Bocuse d'Or Canadian candidate for 1991, agreed to be culinary manager. Michael Noble, Canadian candidate 1995 and 1997, took on the role as team captain. Chris Mills, Bocuse d'Or Canadian candidate 2001, Andrew Springett, candidate 2003, Scott JAEGER, candidate 2007, and Ryan Stone, candidate 2011, all agreed to be on the team. Morgan Wilson, the Canadian candidate for 2005, agreed to come along as support member, and Arthur CHEN, World Culinary Olympics pastry multiple medal winner, joined us as pastry chef. A very intense planning meeting was held in August when menu items were decided, showpieces designed, and responsibilities for executing the various dishes and showpieces were allocated. One single timed practice was held in Calgary in October, where the team experienced the full intensity and complexity of the requirements for this competition, and necessary modifications were made based on input from invited Canadian judges. Preparation time flew by, poring over the vast 900 pages of available ingredients, listing and ordering required equipment, arranging airline details, designing table layouts, printing menus, etc. Not to mention finding a replacement for Chef Chris Mills, who suffered a serious ankle injury and had to drop out from the competing team. Chef John Clark from Joey's Restaurants gamely agreed to join the team and was a great replacement. And then we were off. On November the 11th, accompanied by CCFCC President Donald Gurkowitz and Canadian Judge Simon SMOTKOWITZ, the team gathered in Seattle to take the 14-hour Emirates flight to Dubai. It was a new experience to travel across the world to a culinary competition without the usual required mountain of cargo having to be shipped. However, the team decided to take a few precautions just in case. With the very limited timeline that we were given to prepare our entry, Arthur CHEN left a few days early in order to work on his chocolate, sugar and carving showpieces at the massive Emirates flight kitchen in Dubai. John and Chris's bread showpiece was also pre-prepared and almost got confiscated in security, but everything eventually arrived safely in Dubai. We were met at the airport and taken by bus to the beautiful Maiden Hotel, a massive building overlooking the Dubai racecourse, some distance from the city. After a meal in the restaurant, we were taken to see the kitchen facilities where we would be working for the next few days. We eventually arrived at the commissary kitchens used for catering when the racecourse was in action. Over 40,000 meals a day were apparently produced from this area, although with the limited cooking facilities and small bake shop, it had to be assumed that much of the production consisted of assembly rather than full preparation. Refrigeration facilities were good, however, and we managed to secure a working space close by. Because Team Canada had been selected to present on the first day of the competition, our schedule was tight. Early the next morning, we returned to the kitchen to secure our ordered ingredients. As expected, dry ingredients were supplied in large quantities, and we were happy with our decision to bring pre-weighed items to save valuable time. Fresh items were a little more challenging, with deliveries arriving throughout the day. Lots of items from our requisition list were missing, which meant many trips backwards and forwards as new deliveries came in. This was compounded by the fact that the 11 other competing teams were also searching for their products, leading to some pretty tense moments, especially for the team manager. We were scheduled to begin cooking at 7 a.m. the next day, and with many important ingredients still missing, we decided it was necessary to go out and purchase items ourselves from the local stores. Kitchen working space also proved to be a challenge, since the whole area was to be shared between 4 teams on day 1 and 8 teams on day 2. We secured an area close to our refrigerated storage space, but unfortunately some distance from the hot kitchen and the bake shop. Equipment seemed to be almost non-existent, and what little that was available was designed for very large-scale food preparation. Requested equipment was very limited or simply not provided. So again, we decided to use our local resources, and we're fortunate to be able to borrow certain items from local hotels. At 7 a.m. the next morning, the marathon began. Like all of the teams, we had 48 hours in the mise en place kitchen to prepare our items. However, instead of then transporting everything to the exhibition hall for a lunch service on the 3rd day, the first 4 teams to compete were expected to attend the grand opening ceremony, then return to the hotel, load the trucks, return to the exhibition hall, and set up for dinner service. Working in the kitchen was tough, with other teams searching for ingredients, sharing equipment, and vying for working space. Judges were observing us at all times, and there was always a huge amount of walking to be done, particularly for rest times, meals, and refreshments, all situated that 2-kilometer walk away back in the main hotel. The occasional use of a hotel golf cart was a welcome respite, especially during the heat of the day. The design of the buffet tables also had to be created from a huge variety of polystyrene risers and dishes provided by the organizers. Opening boxes and boxes of chinaware and creating a suitable table setup took up an inordinate amount of time. We had previously seen photographs of everything that we had to work with, but the challenges of dealing with the sizes and numbers of pieces of chinaware proved to be quite daunting. Portion sizes of several items had to be scaled down to fit the dishes available. Day 2, and the tension was rising. The second 4 teams had now entered the kitchen to begin their preparation, so space became even more limited. Ingredients were still arriving. We received our salmon 4 times, but still no sign of the requested lobster. The long-awaited butter order finally arrived, a 10-kilogram block, solidly frozen. All of the menu items had to be plated onto the provided chinaware, some as individual portions, some onto large platters. As each dish was completed, it was packed into boxes and stored ready for taking to the exhibition centre the next day. Arthur, our pastry chef, had the mammoth task of not only completing all of the gâteau and French pastry exhibits, but also for creating the showpieces for each of the tables. The carved pumpkins and bread showpiece, prepared by Chris, were to adorn the savoury table, while the chocolate and sugar showpieces were to be the highlight of the dessert buffet. By now, the kitchen was becoming very crowded, and all 12 teams now vying for space and equipment. The bake shop area was becoming particularly frenetic, with many teams resorting to the hallways to complete their delicate work. Also, the temperature and humidity of the area was making it extremely difficult for sugar work. Early on the morning of the final day, most of the Canadian food was prepared and stored in the refrigerator, ready for loading on the truck as soon as the team had returned from the opening ceremony. Our kitchen space was cleared, cleaned, and the refrigerator emptied so that another team could take over the space. Arthur's sugar piece was still not complete, so he decided to stay behind and try and finish it, while the rest of the team boarded the bus to go to the exhibition centre for the opening ceremony. As soon as this was over, we travelled back to the kitchen, a good 30-minute drive by bus, to load the truck with all of our food and the table decor. Back at the exhibition centre again to wait for the truck to arrive. Containers were unloaded and the finishing of all of the dishes began in the small prep area behind the exhibition hall. Arthur, who had almost given up on completing his sugar showpiece, set to work and performed a miracle by finishing everything at the showground. There was great applause when his beautiful West Coast themed masterpieces safely made it to the buffet table. While half of the team completed the finishing and setting of the buffet tables, Michael Noble and John Clark set to work in the hot kitchen, preparing for the 54 main course plates, which had to be ready to be served 30 minutes after the buffet tables had been judged. The hot dessert station was set. We all stepped away from the finished tables and the judging began. When all of the tables had been judged, it was open to the public. Guests could help themselves from the buffet table and were to be served the hot main course by local staff. It was amazing to look up 15 minutes later to see that nearly everything that was edible on the buffet tables had disappeared. Meanwhile, in the hot kitchen, the boys were hard at work serving the Canadian rabbit main course, while Scott and Arthur served the hot apple dessert from their station. By 7 p.m. that night we were done, except for the cleaning up and reloading of the truck with all of the equipment. The award ceremony was held out in the desert, where we were entertained in true United Arab Emirates fashion. It was a competition like no other, and despite the challenges faced, the problems of missing ingredients and equipment, lack of space to work in, and the endless politics that seem to be part of every culinary event, this team came through as being certainly the most professional and one of the best in the world. We set out with the motto, ready, committed, proud, Canadian. This team lived by that motto all the way.